triple one? Also discussed a very interesting factor, that is personal experiences, right? And under this we have discussed about about a real life example. Fine, till here we have done. Now what is the other factor that influences attitude formation? It is very general, very common, very simple: media related influences. As we talked earlier also, that technology advancement is there, and now audio, video, media, internet, very powerful sources of information are there, right? So all these sources of information are influencing our attitudes, our opinions in some way or the other. Fine. What are the other sources? Your school level textbooks is also are also very important in influencing or changing your attitude or in forming your attitude, right? Right now we are talking about the formation of attitude. So all these forces, all these factors plays a very important role in forming the attitude formation, and somewhere all these factors are also influencing you. Now, how does this process happen? That these sources first strengthen the cognitive and affective components of attitudes. I hope you remember the three components of attitudes: the affective, the cognitive, and the behavioral component. Now, whenever there is a formation of any attitude, what happened? Any source or any factor first strengthen the cognitive and affective component. What does it mean? That it is creating, first of all, a belief, a thinking or thought process, and then your emotions are attached to that a particular subject. Now, when these things are formed, then what happened? Eventually, the behavioral component also come into the scene. That means that you also started behaving in favoring that attitude, right? Suppose you are having a negative attitude, so you will start behaving in a negative manner for that particular topic or for that particular situation or person, right? So this media related influences, it is exerting both kind of influences. We all agree with this: good and bad influences, right? On one hand, the media and internet make people better informed than other modes of communication, but on the other hand, there may be no check on the nature of information, right? So what kind of information it is providing to the children, so there is no check. So there is no control over the attitudes that are being formed or the direction of change in the existing attitudes. Sometimes what happens, we form some attitude, still those attitudes can be changed. It is not that if we have formed some attitudes, it will be for your lifelong. It is not a lifelong process. The influence is not lifelong. Your attitudes can be changed during any stage of your life, right? So this is all about attitude formation. Under attitude formation, we have done the process, and we also have done the factors influencing the attitude formation. Fine. Okay, so now let us start with the next topic, that is attitude change. Now we have formed certain attitudes. Fine, the process and factors are clear. Now we are discussing about attitude change. Now there is also a change could be introduced. What is all about? During the process of attitude formation and also after this process, attitudes may be changed and modified through various influences. Now what is happening? That while in the process of forming any attitude or after forming it, in both the situation, there is a possibility, there is a probability of changing them, right? Attitudes that are still in the formative stage and are more like opinions are much more likely to change What is the meaning of formative stage? We have discussed that attitudes are opinions, right? But when they are in the formative stage, that means when they are just an opinion, there is a chance, there is more chance to change it, as compared to what? As compared to attitudes that have become firmly established and have become a part of the individual values. Now, when that opinion becomes the part of an individual's personal values, right? We have talked about beliefs and values, right? जब तक opinion होता है कोई भी, तो it is much more easy to change. But when it becomes an integral part of your value system, right? So there is little bit difficulty in changing those attitudes. That is why we say that in formative stage means when the attitudes are just opinions, we can change them much easily as compared when they become an integral part of your value system. Fine. Now, what all those are the persons? Can we just name them, or can we just identify them in our surroundings who change our attitude? See, there are political leaders, there are politicians, there are consumer producers, right? Consumer goods producers and advertisers. So these are certain examples who are likely to change our attitude very soon and very frequently in our everyday life. Whenever we see some advertisements on the TV, we all of a sudden change our attitude, right? It was negative attitude earlier for a particular object, but after seeing the things and the way it is presented, it is so appealing, it is so impressive that we change our attitude from maybe from negative to positive or vice versa, right? So this is a brief introduction about attitude change. Whenever we're going to describe anything, attitude formation or attitude change, we will not just start writing it directly. We will just explain 2-3 lines about the process, right? Now let us come upon the process of attitude change. There are 3 major concepts that draw attention to some important processes in attitude change are described below. Now, the first concept of balance, I think I'm going to take it later on because there is a need to explain it each and everything on a board, and by also making you writing certain things. So I don't think it will be possible. Let us just keep it. Let us just hold this, put a big circle on A, page number 112, if you all can see. On page number 112, under process of attitude change, just make a circle on A, we'll cover it later on. Let us now start discussing the B part, the B concept, which is an integral part or process of attitude change. Now, what is it? The concept of cognitive dissonance. The concept of cognitive dissonance was proposed by Leon Festinger, underline the name of the psychologist. What does it say? It emphasizes the cognitive component. Now, what is the first feature of cognitive dissonance? That it obviously emphasizing the cognitive component of an attitude, right? Here the basic idea is that the cognitive components of an attitude must be consonant. Consonant, what is it? Consonant means opposite of dissonance, right? But consonant means that they should be in harmony to each other. They should be logically in line with each other. They should follow a same pattern. It should not that one is going into one direction and other one is going into another direction. If there are two things, they both should be in harmony with each other and they should be logically in line with each other. That means consonant, right? So the basic idea is the cognitive components of an attitude must be consonant, right? If an individual finds that two cognitions in an attitude are dissonant, suppose you are having two kind of thought processes in an attitude, right? So it should not be dissonant, but it should be consonant. And if it is dissonant, these two cognitions are dissonant, means one is going in one direction and other one is just opposite, then one of them will be changed in the direction of consonance, right? If out of two, one is going in negative direction, the other one is going in positive direction, then what will be there? There is a stage of dissonance, right? So to recollect together the condition of consonant, what has to be done? Either the two cognitions should go in negative direction, or the two cognitions should go in the positive direction. Now just let us just understand with the help of this interesting and simple example. Cognition first, that is the first thought process is pan masala causes mouth cancer, which is fatal. Fatal means anything which causes death, which is a disaster, right? So there is first cognition that pan masala causes mouth cancer, which is very disastrous or which is causing death. And what is the cognition second? That means what is the second thought? That I eat pan masala, right? These are the two cognitions. Got the things? Now, holding these two ideas or cognitions will make an individual feel that something is out of tune or dissonant. As we can easily make out that if I'm saying that there is a certain thing which is causing a very disastrous disease called cancer and which can even cause death, right? And on the other side, I'm having this idea that I myself, consuming that dangerous thing every day. So these two ideas or these two cognitions are causing a stage of or a state of dissonance in myself, right? And this is out of tune. So what I will do, therefore, one of these ideas will have to be changed, right? Either I will stop eating pan masala, right? Or I'll start maintaining this kind of belief that it is not at all dangerous. Everyone consumes this. Very rarely people die of eating this pan masala. So I'll just change my first idea, my first cognition, or I'll change my second cognition. I'll stop consuming that pan masala, right? So in the example given above, in order to remove or reduce the dissonance, I will stop eating pan masala. That is, I will change my cognition second. Why I will going to change my cognition second? Because this would be healthy also, right? This would be logical also and sensible way of reducing dissonance, right? Why it is logical and sensible? Because there are evidences available. There have been researches conducted by the doctors that this kind of product causes mouth cancer, right? So this is much more healthier, logical and sensible way of reducing the dissonance, the state of discomfort, right? So this was the concept of cognitive dissonance. Now let us just discuss this same concept with another thing. Festinger and Carl Smith, two social psychologists, conducted an experiment that showed how cognitive dissonance works. Now, the same concept has been explained by two social psychologists, Festinger and Carl Smith. Underline the name, and you can just switch over the box number 6.2, page number 130. Now, through this interesting experiment, they have concluded what? That both balance and cognitive dissonance are examples of what? Cognitive consistency. Let us just come upon these concepts later on. Let us first go through box number 6.2. What experiment has been conducted by Festinger and Carl Smith? Telling a lie for $20. Right? This is the topic of the experiment. What happened into this experiment? After participating in a very boring experiment, a group of students were asked to tell another group of students waiting outside that the experiment was very interesting. What happened? There was a very boring experiment going on, and the participants of that boring experiment were asked to tell another group of students. What is that another group of students? Those students were waiting outside. That students were not participating in the experiment. So the participants of the boring experiment were asked to tell another group of students, those who were waiting outside, that the experiment was very interesting. Now, for telling this lie to the waiting students, half of the participants, right, those who have participated, half of the participants was paid $1, and the other half were paid $20, right? So half of the group were paid what? $1, and the half of the group was paid $20. Got it till here? All understood? Now what happened? After some weeks, the participants of the boring experiment were asked to recall the experiment, right? And to say how interesting they had found that experiment to be. Now what happened? After a few days, after a few weeks, the same participants of that experiment were called upon, and then they were asked to recall that boring experiment, right? And then they were asked that how interesting you found that experiment. So what they have said, the responses showed that the $1 group described the experiment as more interesting than the $20 group. What change has occurred? Have you noticed? Earlier, both were saying that the experiment was boring. But after some weeks passed away, the group who got $1 has changed their perception from boring experiment to what? Interesting experiment. And there was no change in the perception of the group who got $20. Earlier also they were saying that it was a boring experiment in reality, but they told the lie to the waiting students that the experiment was very interesting. But now what change has occurred? जिस ग्रुप को $1 मिला था वो क्या बोल रहा है कि नहीं, the experiment was quite interesting, was actually interesting. But earlier what happened? In reality, the experiment was very boring, and they told this lie to the waiting students that the experiment is interesting. Just try to understand the thing. Maybe you are not getting the things right now, but just read this box number 6.2. See, the initial cognitions would be dissonant cognitions. How come? The experiment was very boring. Fine. It was a boring experiment. I told the waiting students that it was interesting. Fine. Then third one, I told a lie for only $1. Right? $1 के लिए मैंने इतना बड़ा झूठ बोला. क्या था वो झूठ? क्योंकि असली में तो it was very boring, but I have told the waiting students that it is very interesting. ये किसका experience है? उस वाले group of students का जिनको $1 मिला था. Fine. अब उन्होंने change कैसे किया? ये क्या है? Stage of dissonance. Now, how come they have reduced this dissonance? Now they are saying the experiment was actually interesting, and I told the waiting students also the same thing, that it was interesting. Fine. And I would not have told a lie for only $1. Of how they are creating the condition of consonance, or how they are reducing the feeling of dissonance, that actually the experiment was interesting. Fine. And I also told the waiting students that the experiment is interesting. Fine. So what was the thing? That I would not have told a lie. मुझे झूठ नहीं बोलना चाहिए था सिर्फ $1 के लिए. Right? So how they have reduced the state of dissonance by changing their attitude, which was earlier boring, but now they are saying the experiment was actually interesting. Just go through this example once again after the class will over, and you'll you'll be able to understand the concept, right? For the first time, it will be a little bit difficult for you people. Now, what is happening with the group of students who got $20? The $20 group did not experience cognitive dissonance. So they did not change their attitude towards the experiment and rated it as very boring. पहले भी उनके लिए वो experiment boring था, और जब few after some weeks they were called, they are still, stick to that attitude only, that yes, the experiment was boring. Now how we're going to explain it? What they are thinking, the experiment was very boring, fine. And I told the waiting students also that it was interesting. I told a lie, fine. So I told a lie because I was paid $20. Now how they are creating the condition of consonant कि मैंने झूठ किस लिए बोला, क्योंकि I was paid $20 और ये मेरे लिए छोटा amount नहीं है, fine. So for $20 I told a lie, but for the people who got just $1, why the stage of dissonance is there? They start thinking कि सिर्फ $1 के लिए मैंने झूठ बोला, right? So this is a very interesting example, and it happens with all of us. Try to notice and observe these things, right? So this is all about cognitive dissonance. Now next is what? Both balance and cognitive dissonance are examples of cognitive consistency. What is cognitive consistency? It means that two components, two aspects, or two elements of the attitude or attitude system must be in the same direction. When you'll start getting the cognitive consistency, that any two components or aspects or elements should be in the same direction. Fine. Each element should logically fall in line with other elements. If this does not happen, then the person experiences a kind of what? Mental discomfort. That is the sense that something is not quite right? And something is out of tune, fine. So in such a state, some aspect in the attitude system changes in the direction of consistency, because our cognitive system requires logical consistency. Got the thing? They are saying the same thing which we have discussed, that for cognitive consistency, any aspect, any cognition, any two cognition should be in the same direction, right? And if it is not happening, as in the case of with the students who got only $1, right? So what will they do? They will change their one cognition into the direction of the previous one, right? So both the cognition or both the belief will go in the same direction. Now what is important, that basically our cognitive system always approves some logical consistency. As we have discussed the example of that pan masala, what we have changed that I should stop eating this, right? So this is more logical, healthy and sensible way of reducing dissonance, fine. So this is all about the cognitive dissonance, that is B part of the process. Yes, now we can stop with the recording.